Okay, let us start. The format sa school na ginasunod for research is not really the same with that of your thesis in your senior high na mga years. Kasi 'di ba ang sa senior high ninyo, I believe you use the chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So like chapter 1 is background of the study, chapter 2 kay review of related literature. So ana siya 'di ba ang inyong gibuhat during your senior high school years. Pero this time sa inyong research for college, we will be using the IMRAD format. So when you say IMRAD format, there will be 4 sections only. The first section will be the introduction, and then the second section is, that's I, right? So ang second is M, methodology, and then R is results, and D, discussion. So kana lang. So kung napansin ninyo, different siya no kay ang last time ninyo nga gigamit 5 ka chapters, you have a separate chapter for the review of related literature. So this time, the review of related literature is actually fused sa introduction part of the thesis. So these are the components of the introduction. We have syempre the introduction itself, the statement of the problem, hypothesis and assumption, and significance of the study. And then we have the theoretical and or conceptual framework, the scope and delimitation of the study, and take note that the review of related literatures and studies is already included in this section of your paper. Okay? So I hope that is clear ha. Ganito din ang pagkasunod-sunod when you will make your paper na class. So pag magbuhat na tag paper, diretso-diretso na ni introduction ang first, tapos followed by the statement of the problem, and so on. So the last part of the introduction section will be the review of related literature and studies. Okay? So let's start sa introduction. So this is very important. The introduction is very important because this will highlight the problem, the issue that you want to solve, and a well-written introduction will also attract readers to read more about your study, and dili sila ma-confuse. Instead, they will be interested sa pagbasa sa inyong paper kung unsa ba ang inyong findings sa inyong study. So again, the introduction leads the reader from a general subject area to a particular topic of inquiry. Ano ba ang laman ng introduction? This will explain why this research is important or necessary. Nabalik-balik na siya. Important or necessary. And this begins by describing the problem or situation that motivates the research. So, ang sa introduction talaga class, you have to introduce the problem. Okay? So, for example, your study is about antibacterial activity. Therefore, you will be introducing the condition that is caused by the certain bacteria that you want to study. So for example, you have there the Staphylococcus aureus. So that is just one bacteria, but it actually causes a lot of condition. So either you focus on one condition only, or you will mention many of those conditions. Okay? So i-ano ninyo na siya, i-introduce ninyo sa inyong introduction. So another thing, if your study is about the antacid activity, then para saan ba ang antacid? Pwede siya for hyperacidity. We can also use it for GERD, that's gastroesophageal reflux disease. So you introduce those problems before you move on with the introduction of your plant material and the use of that plant material in your study. Now, for the descriptive na mga studies class, still you have to introduce your problem. Like, factors affecting vaccine acceptance. Ano ba ang problem na gusto nyong i-address dito? Yung pagpa-vaccine ng mga individual or yung mga citizens sa Philippines. So bakit ano bang problema sa kanila? There are people na ayaw magpa-vaccine because of the reasons. Their reasons. So you can search from literatures kung ano ba ang sinasabi ng mga literature sa mga factors that will affect either the acceptance or the refusal of the people sa pag-vaccine. And you can also state their reasons. Bakit? Okay? And what else? Ano pa study dito? Correlation between entrance exam scores and board exam rating. Siguro you may discuss sa introduction pa lang kung what is the importance of what is the importance and the relationship of the entrance exam results and dito sa pwede po siya academic performance and even the board exam rating. So kung unsa nga problem ang inyuhang gusto i-solve in that kind of study mo na inyuhang ibutang sa introduction. So introduce sa ninyo ang inyuhang problem and then you will move to discussing the current state of research in the field. So most likely we will be using statistical data here to really establish the urgency of your study. So for example, na-mention na ninyo inyong problem sa first paragraph or first 2 paragraphs of your introduction. After that, you will move to discuss the urgency. Why are you going to conduct the study? So for example, because sa hyperacidity ani nakadaghan ang mga tao nga naga-suffer from hyperacidity. So pwede mo magbutang og kanang mga statistical data kung gikan sa iba't ibang literatures or kung another experimental study antibacterial activity, for example sa E. coli can cause UTI. So unsa na ba kadaghan ang tao nga naga-suffer from UTI? That should be international, national and local ha. Kung mag-mention mo og statistical data, dili lang isa ka buok nga para lang sa Amerika. No, you have to include also the statistical data here in the Philippines. You can access this data even sa internet. And also if you can look for local literatures, then mas okay yun na siya. Kasi ang uban man good, there are researchers na they find it difficult to find data for the local situation. So most of the time, just like last batch, since they cannot find data in the internet for General Santos City alone, so what they did is they went to the City Health Office and asked for the data sa City Health. If they have the data they ask there kung unsa na ba ang na take note sa City Health Office sa kadaghanon sa people with that certain condition in General Santos City. But if ever you cannot find it in the internet, or even if you go to the City Health Office, they don't have data also. So ang ginawa nila is they have the Soxargen area as a whole. So pwede kasi siyang Region 12 na lang. Kasi I think that's more accessible if Region 12, it has bigger scope. So I think you can also find those data from the internet. And then you have to reveal also a gap or problem in the field. Kasi as we all know, naa namang good ni sila. For example, kung experimental inyong study, naa namang good tayo mga existing na mga tambal. We have antacids, for example, daghan na kaayo mga antibacterial agent. So you have to reveal, why are we going to conduct this study? Why are we making or discovering new drugs for this certain condition? So when you say gap, these are part of the problem that is not yet studied, or may kulang na mga information, or may mga problem tayo with the existing ones. So mauni siya ang when you say you have to reveal a gap in the problem sa field. And finally, you have to explain how the present research is a solution to that problem or gap. I don't know if I still have my introduction here. Let me show you an example of the research na nagawa ko na. Pero let me see ha. Kung napa ba. Wait. Para you can picture it out how I made the introduction. So, na ko ibutang faculty. I'll be looking for my master's na thesis also later. I don't know if I have my graduate studies na research. Maybe naasa akong pikas nga laptop. Pero this is the recent, this is not the recent one. But I made this last year. So this is in the IMRAD format also. So this is how I made the introduction. So the first part there is I introduced the topic of my research. Actually, the topic of my research is development of pharmacology laboratory manual. That's the title also. So I want to make a pharmacology laboratory manual. So as you can see, my introduction starts with this one. The main concern of pharmacy education in the Philippines is to provide the country with scientifically competent pharmacists who deliver the full spectrum of pharmaceutical services needed in the healthcare delivery. So pharmacy practice encompasses pharmaceuticals, cosmetics, household hazardous substance, drug delivery devices, and veterinary medicines. And at the heart of this program is the so-called pharmacology, which literally means the study of drugs. So that's how I introduced. It's not really called a problem, no. Sa problem siya, tawagon na lang, pero actually dili yun siya totally matawag nga problem. So I'll just call this the topic of my research, the pharmacology. So that's how I introduced my topic. It's not really necessary na the first paragraph or the first sentence in your introduction comes from literatures or studies. Kasi pwede ka namang mag-assertion beginning that for me, this is the main concern of the pharmacy education sa Philippines. And tinuod man sad na at the heart of pharmacy is pharmacology. So after introducing the topic of my study, gi-expound na nako ang problem. Okay? So diri na ko nag-start og kuha og mga literatures or studies na, for example, kani the CMO from the CHED, para ma-expound na ko ang topic nga gusto gyud ko magbuhat og laboratory manual sa pharmacology. So ako man na siyang gi-introduce sa taas, so gi-expound na ko na siya diri sa ilalom. Kung unsa ang pharmacology, unsa ang objective sa course na or sa subject na, unsa ang kailangan sa mga students. Okay? So, medyo taas-taas lang niya akong introduction, no, kasi mahaba kasi ang study na ito. This one is a mixed method na study. So ang actually ang inyong mga study lang, quantitative descriptive and quantitative experimental. This study na kani akong gibuhat is actually a mixed method. When you say mixed method, both quanti and quali. Kaya medyo mahaba ang aking introduction. But for you, since you have one research design only or research method, then ang pinakataas na introduction is 1.5 page. Okay? 1.5 page lang na siya. Let me see if I still have a copy of another one. Kung paano siya gi-introduce ang problem. This one is another study. This one is the recent one I made, pero this is in collaboration with a nursing na teacher kasi this is intended for nursing actually. So, what's the title of this? This is Kale Mentoring Program and Intervention Plan. So this is for the academic performance of the students sa eskwelahan para tabangan sila. So intervention plan man for the students. So paano nato i-introduce ang problem? So just like the other paper I made, this one is an assertion type of introduction wherein I introduced the topic of the research or the problem of the research using assertion. Na ako'y gina-assert na mao ni akong ginatuuhan. So dili siya again necessary nga you have to look for literatures. Dito naka sa mga second na mga or succeeding paragraphs. So since my problem is the academic performance of the students sa eskwelahan, so this is how I introduce the problem. So students are the strength of every school. The students' academic performance is vital in producing quality graduates who will become assets of the country's social and economic growth. However, the increasing incidence of low to failing grades both for major and professional courses among students in higher education raised the signal to educators and other stakeholders to look for alternatives to mitigate the situation. So that's how I introduced my problem. The problem of my study is naay problem ang mga estudyante, and that is the increasing incidence of low to failing grades. Therefore, it leads the educator to find solution for that. So mo na siya hangtod sa na-introduce na ko, nagbutang ko din hiog mga daghang factors kani academic performance man ang ginaistoryahan. So in between gi-expound na ko na unsa ng academic performance, unsang mga factors ang naga-affect ana. And I even, since we cannot really find statistical data about this, so I also discussed here the current situation sa GSD-MSFI, pero this is again for the nursing program. Okay? Medyo mahaba din ito kasi mixed method din ito na study. So at the end of the introduction, gi-state na ko ang objectives sa study. So since naa may mga background ang introduction kasi should give background information of the problem. So naaman dito nakabutang sa taas na mao ni ang problem sa mga estudyante, they have problem with their academic performance. Tas mao ni ang mga naga-affect sa ilahang academic performance, ilahang study habit, ang ilahang environment, and so on. So given this information, ang goal sa researcher is to actually make and implement an intervention plan to help this student na mag-increase ang ilahang academic performance. So meaning sa introduction class, it is important to introduce the problem first, expound it, establish why do we need to conduct the study, and at the end of the introduction, you have to set the objective of your study. So kay mauman ni imuhang problema, so unsa karon ang atuang buhaton. That should be the end of every introduction. So I think mo ni puros mo guni mixed method ang akong so far gunit na mga mga thesis. Pero let me look at my master's na thesis. Yeah, I have my master's na thesis there. Okay, master's na ako ni na thesis. This one is an experimental na study. It's the pero dili man gani siya imrad nga format, but anyway, this is how I made the introduction. Medyo mahaba din ito. Wait lang. So, ang ako ang study sa masters is actually about cancer, pero it's more on the anti-angiogenic activity of a certain plant. Of two plants. Kaya mahaba ang introduction ko kasi dalawang plants ang gidiscuss ko dito. And kailangan ko kasing i-relate ang cancer sa anti-angiogenic activity. So muna, kung nakita ninyo sa first part sa introduction, yes, I introduced cancer as my main problem. As you can see, cancer has become a worldwide problem nowadays. And after that, nag-end akong first paragraph with this one. I introduced the main part of cancer therapy nga gusto nako studyhan. Kasi when you say cancer therapy, daghan magud kay tagtambal for cancer. We have radiation therapy, we have surgery, we have chemotherapy. So we have drugs for cancer and they have different mechanism of action. So in this case, I want to focus on one mechanism only, and that is the inhibition of the blood supply sa cancer cells. So this is more on the inhibition of the progression of the disease or pag-increase sa growth or sa size sa tumor. This is not really about ganing eradicating cancer, pero kasi ni siya angiogenesis. So pag mayroon kag angiogenesis, this is just inhibition of the new blood vessels. Mao lang ni ang trabaho sa ako ang gusto i-explore. So right after cancer, I discussed what angiogenesis is. Hangtod din medyo daghan-daghan kasi I have to establish the role of angiogenesis in cancer. And then after that, kung na-establish na nako, actually after na-establish ang role ni angiogenesis sa cancer, actually nibalik ko sa mga tambal na available sa cancer and even discussed what are the most pinakadaghan nga cancer worldwide in the Philippines, and I don't think I have figures here for the local, wala ata. Okay? And then after that, I established the need on why gusto na ko magkaroon og another tambal sa cancer, given that nga daghan na kay tagtambal sa cancer ha. Pero since ang demand ani ng mga tambal cost a lot, so mauna siya nga I ended up with this one. I introduced my plant materials kasi tungod sa naay problem with the existing na mga tambal nato sa research. So i-introduce na ko ang possibility of having plant materials for cancer prevention and treatment. So mo na siya, possibility na siya. And then after the possibility, that's where I introduced my plant materials. Take note, humaba ito kasi dalawang plant materials ang tinest ko for angiogenesis. Anti-angiogenic, I mean. Angiogenesis is the formation of new blood vessels. Kasi just like our cells in the body, nga pag masamad ta mag-heal siya, we will have new cells. Ang ato ang mga blood vessels also are being renewed. There will be formation of new blood vessels in the body. So my study is, ang target is to inhibit those formation. Kasi the more nadaghan og blood vessels, the more blood supply. Kung sa tumor siya na case, the more nga daghan og blood supply sa tumor, mas daghan nga nutrients ang makaabot sa tumor, so the more nga magpaspas ang iyang growth. So that's my main problem here sa ako ang study. So duha ka plant material ang ako ang gi-discuss. So medyo mahaba. And aside sa angiogenesis manggod, I have lots of things nga gistudihan pa. So naapa ko din part sa bioremediation or phytoremediation. That's another activity of my plant material. My main problem is cancer, pero naapa ko another activity nga gistudihan. So medyo taas lang ni siya nga study. Dili lang ninyo ni siya buhaton. Ang akong gastoan ni is mga more than 100,000. And this is individual nga study for masters. So mo na siya nga, kung napansin ninyo sa title defense, medyo alanganin, 'di ba, ang mga si Ma'am Eroy, si Ma'am Mabe sa kung unsay pinakadali nga study mo to ilahang gina-approve. Kasi dili pud na mo gusto nga grabe inyong gasto, no? Kasi human na ba mig masters si Ma'am Eroy ako. So nakita na mo kung unsa ka lisod, especially ang experimental na study. So mao gyud akong giingon nga murag na at some point in my master's na study, I stopped counting pila akong nagasto, pero it's more than 100,000 for this. Napakoy bioremediation, napakoy heavy metal analysis. So muna nga, taas kayo akong introduction. Pero at the end of the introduction, I set the objectives of the study gihapon. Okay? Tinuod na siya, wala ko nag-joke with 100,000. Since remember, my study is for cancer, anti-angiogenesis, and then aside from that, nganong 100,000 akong gasto? Kasi aside from the anti-angiogenic activity, nag-bioremediation pa ko. When you say bioremediation, it's the ability of the plant material to get rid of the heavy metals sa soil. Kasi important na siya pag nagakandak ka o gusto ka maghimo og drug nga gikan sa plant material. Kasi whatever is in the soil, maadto na siya sa plant. O kung ato ang i-consume ang plant, maadto na siya sa ato ang body. And then remember, you have learned class that heavy metals are cumulative poison. So kung ma-accumulate sila sa body, magiging poison sila. So ang another nga gi-test is the ability of my plant materials to clean the soil para mawala ang mga heavy metals. Tapos number 3, gi-check pud nako mismo ang heavy metal content of my plant material kasi remember inumon baya siya kay tambal siya. So gi-check pa nako unsa na mga heavy metals ang present sa akong plant, and kung may heavy metals man na present, gipa-establish pa og unsa kadaghan, kung allowed, makasulod lang ba siya sa allowed na heavy metal content of the plant material. That's another thing I also established in my master's na study, ang toxicity sa akong plant materials. And remember, duha ka book akong plant materials, so medyo dako ako ang gasto in establishing the toxicity, no, kung toxic ba siya or dili. So sa toxicity pa lang na testing, I think nigamit ko og mga 24 ka ilaga. 24 ba? 24, 36, sorry. That's 36. 36 ka ilaga ako ang gigamit. Or 24, I forgot. I think ang 36 ang kay Ma'am Eroy. We have the same study ni Ma'am Eroy na anti-angiogenic sa plant, pero duha ako ang plant, isa lang iyaha, and mas daghan ang scope sa akong study compared sa iya. So muna siya. Kailangan kung ano gyud thesis, para dili mo malisang dili mo kanang ma-hate ninyo ang thesis, muna siya nga ang ginapili gyud sa mga panel is katong medyo sayon-sayon lang. Para dili pod mo makagasto og ingani kadako, dili makakamang o grabing kamang. Katong akong master's na thesis, that's where I learned to drive nga ako lang isa from Jensen to Davao and then balikan. Medyo kapoy jud kay to siya nga part sa akong life. So dili na ako siya gusto uliton, though I have my dissertation sa PhD karong moabotay na first sem, pero dili na ako mag-experimental kay medyo gasto. Okay lang unta kung by group, kay sa grupo ma-divide din yung inyong gasto, ma-divide din yung ang work, pero sa masters o sa PhD man good class, it's individual. So kung mag-conduct ka experiment, ikaw lang isa. Kung mag-administer ka, mag-alaga ka sa imuhang mga animals, ikaw lang isa. Solo flight. Solo flight, good siya. Okay? Pero sa introduction, parehas lang kung paano na ko siya gisulat. Dili man siya necessary jud na experimental. Actually that time sa ako ang depende man gud siya sa mga panel, na ay na ay year, na ay tuig na gusto nila experimental lang tanan. Tapos naapoy year nga ginasagulan nila og descriptive. So during our time ni Ma'am Eroy manggod, classmate manggod mi ni Ma'am Eroy sa masters. Kay dugay man na siya nahuman sa iyang masters, but I don't know. Ako siyang ginasungog nga, ma'am, gihulat gyud ko nimo ba para ano para magdungan ta graduate. Actually si Ma'am Eroy nag-start siya sa iyang masters. College student pa ko. Tapos nagsabay mi og graduate sa masters mo, ginasungog na ko siya, naghulat jud ko niya kay as in nagsabay gyud mi. Ano siya nga, ang iya pong reason nga gusto gyud daw siya na kasabay maghimo og thesis kay true enough, since lisod jud kung ikaw lang isa, matutong na si Ma'am Eroy ako'y mugunit sa iyang ilaga para mag-administer siya, and then the other way around. Dili day siya the other way around. Dili day gusto si Ma'am Eroy mo gunit og ilaga. So we have somebody nga nagtabang sa ako atong ako na ang mag-administer. So gusto lang niya og companion mo na nga medyo nadugay pud siya og complete sa iyang study. But nevertheless, since daghan man mo, I believe you can really finish your introduction na part sa study ha, na magtinabangay mo para dili mo maglisod. So how do we present the problem of our study? We can use assertion beginning. Katutanan class nga akong gipakita sa inyo ha, from the development of the laboratory manual, the Kale mentoring program, and then my master's na thesis. Those are all assertion beginning. So as you can see, I started with my assertion of the problem. Unsa ang ako ang assertion sa problem nako. For example, cancer nowadays are very rampant. It's a problem. And also katong sa Kale mentoring program, it's also an assertion that the students are really the strength of every school, but that the problem with the students is rampant pod, nagataas ang case sa low to failing grades. So mga assertion to siya before introducing the problem and expounding the problem. Ang mga assertion beginning to siya. Pero you can actually start with a quotation beginning, a quotation from another author, from another people concerning your problem. Or you can also have question beginning. I mean, when you say question beginning, as in the first paragraph of your introduction starts with a question. Question related to your problem. Pero most of the time, ako mga makita ng mga research, assertion beginning to siya. Mag-schedule na mo if when mo mag-aw sa buka. From the first batch up to the, I don't know with this batch ha, pero makadaot og friendship ang research class. Daghan kaayog mga mag-classmates nga mag-away tungod sa research. Ang ilahang ginaawayan, either na ay isa ka tao or duha ka tao nga wala gyud gitabang sa ilahang research, or na ay isa ka tao nga dili mo amot sa research mo na ilang niawayan class. So I hope walay mga magguba nga friendship because of research ha. So please magtinabangay mo, kung sa tanaw ninyo dili mo makatabang sa part nga magsulat og papel, tama na siya, Chris siya. Pagluto og pansit canton para sa inyong groupmate para magdagan ang ilahang utok. Sa mukay, mag-record kayo lang pages. For introduction, the most 2 pages na. Pero most of the time, ang ideal jud is 1.5 page ang introduction. Madang ideal. Pero kung dili siya makaya nga 1.5, the most na gyud ng duha ka pages. So kaya ninyo na siya ha. Pag-abot sa amot tayo class, pag amot pud mo ha, maluoy pud mo sa inyong mga classmates na ni gasto tas kamo dawat limpyo lang mo. Actually, ang ginahimo sa eskwelahan, ginatanggal gyud sa grupo ang wala nagatabang. So it's your responsibility also na to report sa inyong advisor kung kinsa ang wala nagatabang sa research. Pag wala na ginatabang, actually ginatagaan pa na og chance nga ginahatagan og trabaho and then hatagan og deadline nga ma-produce niya na nga trabaho. Pero bisa pag gitagaan na og chance niya, wala gihapon naglihok. That's the time tanggalon na siya sa group. And you have the option either mag-solo flight ka, magbuhat kag sarili nimo nga research, ug number 2, mag-re-enroll na lang ka next year. So mo na siya ang mahitabo sa mga wala nagatabang. Okay? I-offer ang balay. O basta ano na siya, para-paraan lang. You offer your help. Kung sa tanaw ninyo ani mo kaya nimo buhaton ang introduction ninyo nga ikaw ra, then you can offer that and sila na bahala sa uban. Or kung sa tanaw nimo wala gyud kay wala gyud kay matabang sa papel kay dili gyud ka kabalog unsaon, pangita og ways nga makatabang ka, either you help sa mga ano sa tawagan na ha, nakalimot ko sa tawagan na, pero kanang mga other needs sa research bitaw. So i-offer ninyo yung balay kay kusog inyong internet, mga nga na mga na mga ways. Grabe ayo pud nang magluto pansit canton, adlaw-adlaw sa inyong life magluto pansit canton. Sa finances, you can also offer help na sa tanaw ni mo wala gyud kay matabang sa inyong papel. So kung sa mga experimental na study, kung wala mo'y matabang sa inyong papel, pagbawi mo dito sa experiment class, kamoy mo buhat sa experiment. Actually mo na ang gibuhat sa last batch na ay grupo din nga experimental nga ang ilahang leader ang nisulat sa ilahang papel. Unya nakita na ko tong sila na kaya ako man lang advisor to nag-experiment na sila, may gibuhat ng leader, nagsige na naman nigpungko. So ako silang gipangutana. Therefore, ang nahitabo di ay ato kay since ang leader ang nagbuhat sa papel, ang mga members ang nagbuhat sa experiment. Mo nang chill ang leader during the experiment. Kung mahuman na ang mga uban grupo sa ilahang data, ginahatag lang nila, tas nagsulat ilahang leader sa papel. Nag-divide na lang sila sa work. Mga na ilahang gibuhat. Okay, so please take note of this. Avoid the dictionary introduction. Sa inyong problem, wala ta nag-introduce og problem based kung paano siya gi-define sa dictionary or paano siya gi-define sa books ha. So kato ako mga gipang pakita sa inyuhan ng mga example, wala mo nakakita dito nga gi-define nako ang cancer. Kung unsa ang meaning sa cancer, wala na siya sa ako ang introduction. Ni diretso ko kung unsa gyud ang unsa ang tan-aw nato sa cancer karon ug unsay dapat buhaton nato. Unsay existing na mga data about cancer. Ang definition sa mga sakit na description sa mga sakit na or definition sa problem ninyo, makita na siya sa review of related literature, dili sa introduction. So, kung napansin po ninyo, wala po ko nag-define og academic performance sa isa ka study. Wala na ko to siya gi-define. Okay? So, again, avoid dictionary na introduction. So, 4 ideas to be discussed sa inyuhang introduction. Siyempre, number 1, inyuhang topic or the subject matter. You have to define and elaborate using methods of paragraph development like classification and giving examples. And then, importance of the topic, you have to cite the role that the topic plays in your life and community and the benefits derived from it. And then also you have to establish in your introduction the reasons why or the reason or the reasons why you choose this topic. You have to emphasize what motivated you to choose the topic. It's more on the gap, meaning mauni ang mga existing na mga interventions sa certain problem, pero what's missing? So because missing na siya nga information or missing na siya nga part sa intervention, so dinha ninyo karon isulod ang reason nganong gi-choose ninyo na nga i-conduct na study. And then lastly again, all introduction should end with the objective or the purpose of your study. So example, the researcher wanted to conduct this study, or the researcher aims to determine the efficacy of a certain plant material to a certain condition, or you want the researcher aim to determine the relationship of this variable to another variable. So mo ni siya ang sulod sa atuang introduction. So karon nga gabi please start. It's already 11:26. Please start contemplating how are you going to make your introduction. If you want to divide the work, then you may do it para masugdan na ninyo inyuhang introduction karon. Kung naamoy mga problems along the way, naamoy concerns, please reach out sa inyuhang advisor. Tapos mangutan na sila. Nanong nag-chat mo, ingon ni Ma'am Raysa, ma'am. Ingon ni Ma'am Raysa, maduwal dami sa inyo. Pero that is actually kabalo na sila na expected na nila nga from time to time naagi mo duol sila nga estudyante regarding research. Especially kay under mo sa ilaha. So ang under sa ako my Facebook is always open. It's just that there are times na busy ko so I cannot reply agad-agad. Pero just wait, mo reply gyud ko. Mo reply gyud ko anang inyong mga concern pero usahay paghulat lang sa pag kanang dili na ko busy. Okay? So mao na inyong first assignment karon sa summer ang inyong introduction. Mag-start na mo og draft sa inyong introduction. Okay? And pag-expect mo class nga ang first draft ninyo kung magpasa pa mo og hard copy, daghan gyud nagpula. Daghan gyud na siya og mga gusto change or gusto ipa-arrange sa inyong advisor sa inyo ha. So just be patient. Okay? Pag dili mag-reply inyong advisor, mag-chat pag mo sa ako sa mukay, mag-reply gina sila class. I'll also remind them from time to time. Pero there are also cases nga dili ako ang advisor pero pag mangutana ang student, naga-reply man sad ko. Grabe pero dili jud ta mo pansinon. Naga-reply man sad ko. Bisag dili mo under sa ako Sa mukha po ng mga next sem pag-reply. Wait lang ha, let me